garage for episode 12 of the tonner build. It's been 6 months since I've done anything on the tonner, and it's been going alright, but I thought it's finally time, and I've tried and tested my tuning techniques on the tonner. I've been driving it for 6 months and I'm ready to make a tuning video and share it with you guys. An update on the tonner: it's been going well. It's probably done 5,000 kilometers now in 6 months. I don't really drive it that much, but it's going really well. I've ended up putting a little boost T on there and turned the boost up and tuned that in as well. So on today's video we'll go through setting up the scanner part of the HP tuner software. I'll show you all the wideband sensor and gauge that we put into the car so that we can log AFRs, air fuel ratios. I'll show you how to wire it in, and yeah, we'll get stuck into it. I'll show you a few things on the tonner. The only real update for more boost is this little boost T that just interrupts the signal, bleeds off some signal to the wastegate to hold that valve shut and give it more boost. So we run about 8 pounds of boost now. We'll see all that in the scanner. Now here's the HP tuners, what they call a dongle. There's your wideband gauge. I like to use AEM because HP tuner software actually has a selection in one of the menus for this gauge, so it's a lot easier to set up. You can see I've got it all joined together into a little bit of a loom that suits my tuning style and my sort of cars. I've tuned the power to the gauge into a cigarette lighted, so I can swap from car to car easily. This is where it plugs into the OBD2 port. That's where it goes into your laptop. Just a USB, and one of the wires out of the wideband, the white wire, will actually go into the first little plug port in the side of this, into the side of the dongle. And I also run an earth to the dongle as well, the second wire there, and it's earthed into the same negative side as the cigarette lighter. Now that helps the wideband gauge read exactly the same as what it will read on the laptop. Before I put that earth on, it was a little bit out, it was a couple of points out. As soon as I put that earth in, it was bang on. So this is the oxygen sensor part of the gauge. It'll plug into here, and this will go into the exhaust. So what I'll do is I'll get all this in the car and I'll show you it all set up into the car. Okay, I've got the oxygen sensor installed. It goes to the AEM wideband gauge. Just goes in my bung that I put in here when I fabricated the dump pipe. And because I temporarily put this wideband into the cars, everything I do here is just a temporary install. Some people, if they want to run the wideband gauge in their car full time, they'd run all the wiring through the firewall, mounting the gauge permanently. But it's just all temporary for me. And I'd rather have my oxygen sensor, 300 or 400 mil away from the back of the turbo where they recommend it, rather than some people put the oxygen sensor way back in the tailpipe where you can get interrupted readings. Here is the most accurate place to put it. Make sure you don't put it on the bottom where moisture might get into it, because moisture will definitely kill it. So oxygen sensor in there, and then that's just the excess wrapped around there, and then I just run the wire, it goes outside under the bonnet, then into the cab. Now I'll go around the other side and I'll show you where the rest of it's situated. Now I just zip tie the gauge to the top of the column there so that I can see the air fuel ratio when I'm driving along, so I can quickly get out of it if it goes lean, especially in the early times of tuning where you might actually get lean spots, really lean spots. You can get right out of it because lean will cause damage. The OBD2 port's there, it's plugged in. The wires is joined together. Over there is where the excess is that comes through the window that goes out to the oxygen sensor. I just sort of poke that in there. And then you've got the dongle, laptop with USB, and then center console you've got your power and earth, so everything's powered up. It's really just quite an easy temporary setup to tune. Now we're ready to tune, but there's firstly a lot more that you have to do in the scanner, modifying the scanner part of the hardware. So we'll move on to doing all their modifications before we start driving around and logging and making adjustments to the VE table and maybe even the timing table. So we'll look at the scanner, modify all that, and then we'll come back and do some driving around. Okay, let's get stuck into this, setting up the scanner, ready to do some tuning. This is part 2 of the tuning, how to tune your Turbo LS, so to speak. Part 1 was video 10 of the Turbo Tonner build on how to set up your bass tune in the editor, HP tuners. And now we're going to work on setting up the scanner, ready to hook up to the car and go and get some information so we can make changes to the editor. First thing you're going to need to do is open up your VCM editor and get your tune that's in the car, your bass tune up, ready to go. I've already done it, it's ready to go. So this is what I've already built, it's ready to go, it just sits there. Then you have to open up your scanner, and when you open it up it'll look like this. First thing we want to do is set the layout, set a bass layout, because we have to change all of this so it reads and gives us the information that we require, the correct information that we require to make changes to the editor. The two programs work separately. This reads the ECU in the car, collects the information, and then the editor obviously edits the information and then puts it onto the computer in the car, which is a pretty basic way of explaining it, but yeah, that's how it is. So the first thing you need to do is set your layout. So head on up here to layout, go into default layouts, that's one I like to use, down to racing. You're using O2 AFR, we're using an air fuel ratio gauge, and then we want to use airflow with cylinder airflow, and it's measured in G's, so that's the one we want. Set that up and this is what you get. One thing I've noticed is the gauges, for me, complete waste of time. Yeah, cool, they look good and everything like that, but it's just, I have absolutely no use for them. So I don't use the gauges at all. I concentrate on the 3 main things. It's the channels, the graphs, and the charts. So I'll separate this video into sort of subtitles so we can go through each part, so you can scroll back and make sure you got it all done. The base layout is set. Let's move on to adding channels and customizing the channels, which is over the side here. Now these channels are the different sensors in the ECU that the ECU is able to read and the scanner is able to read. So you need to add ones that you will need. Now the default settings when you open the scanner might look different to this. I've added some already. I don't know how to return this back to standard, so I could start from scratch, but I will show you how to add channels. So one of the most important channels that you would need would be the manifold absolute pressure, which is your map, which if you boosted, and you're probably watching this because your car's boosted, if not, your normal intake manifold pressure will work, the standard one. But if you're boosted, you need the 2-bar one. So to add a channel, you would actually go to this little thing here, this little cog, add channel, and then this will come up, and this is your ECU type, PO1, blah blah blah, and these are all the different sub menus. So you would go into engine, and you would go, you can just see how much is going to be available. You go into airflow, and then you go into intake, sorry, manifold, not intake, manifold's where the pressure is, then you'll see it there, manifold absolute pressure 2-bar. Double click on that and it will come up in your channels. Now that's the same with whatever you want to know and whatever you want to find in here and you want to look at, you just double click and it will come up in your channels, no worries at all. So you can play around with that. There's a lot of things in there that you can look at. I'm just going to show you pretty much the basic ones you need. So you definitely need your 2-bar manifold pressure. Another thing you'll need is definitely need RPM, that should already be there. You'll need the cylinder air mass, which should already be there as well, because that's what you'll need for later on. You'll see in your graphs that it needs to be in the channels for it to work on the graph, and you know, whatever else you need. One that will not be there will be this here, which is the AEM gauge, which is an external input. Now I'll show you how to add your AEM or even any wideband air fuel sensor. So you same again, you would add channel, but down here you'll see external inputs, and then you'll see the MPVI Pro, and that's pretty much, this is the ports and the little green plug on the side of the dongle. Now if you remember in the start of this video where I run the wire out of the AEM wideband, the white wire, into input number 1. So input number 1 is where you know your wideband is, so you would double click that. Now I already have one set up, so I'm just sort of showing you it's already set up, but how you would set it up. Then you'll see it here, it'll come up MV1 input, right click, go into transform, and you'll see here it's an oxygen sensor, and it's an air fuel ratio oxygen sensor. So you'll go into there, then you can choose what gauge you have. Like, look at all the gauges that you can have. Have a look at that before you even buy one, just so it makes it easy. Mine is the very first one, so you would double click that, and then it's set up. Then in your channels you'll have your AEM 410, which is my wideband. Now you've got manifold pressure, you got air fuel ratio, you've got RPM. That's a lot of all you need to really know. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to overcomplicate the crap out of this. Another thing I will note is down here you can see in the channels I still have these short-term fuel trims. Now I check these to make sure when I'm driving the car they're at 0%. So I know that those changes that we made in the base tune to make it closed, like, you know, locked into open loop operation, so that the ECU is not making any changes to the fuel tables or the timing tables by itself. It's all locked in, so it's running on what we have set. These will always read 0. Another one that should always read 0 is burst knock. That's part of closed loop. We don't want it to be changing the timing position or anything like that by itself, so that should read 0 as well. That should not ever read. So then those things there should always read 0%. That will guarantee that you've definitely done the right changes in the ECU and that you are running open loop operation, which for me it's the easiest way, and it's the way I suggest, especially if you're starting out. If you're experienced, sure, you can start closed loop operation tuning that way, and there's so much more involved. I don't think it's worth it. Just open loop. So yeah, that's the way you can check. Alright, let's move on. Okay, now it is time to modify the chart. This is the chart. Looks like one of those machines that you get hooked up to when you're on the emergency table in the hospital. It's got all the lines. It tracks all this information, which in my opinion is too much. It's more than you need. You've got more squiggly lines here when you're logging than you really need to know what to do with. So I like to simplify it down to the most basic information. So at a glance I can have a quick look while I'm driving the car, look over at my laptop and see what's going on, check for knock retard, so on and so forth. So what we'll do is we'll trim this right down and make sure it's going to read the information that we need. So to do that, anywhere on here you can right click and go into charts layout, and you can see here the correlation between the groups, which is the roads really, group 5 bottom, and then 4, 3, 2, 1 as you go up, and you can see different information in between each. Now let's straight away start off by trimming some. Now group 5, long and short term fuel trims, I do not need to know that. It means nothing to me, so nothing in group 5 means anything to me. So let's get rid of the group, gets rid of the row. The O2 sensors, they're the factory ones in the exhaust it's talking about there, and injector in milliseconds, injector duty time maybe, something like that. Absolutely no need for that. Let's get rid of that. Now group 3, there's a little bit in there that we need to know. the KR, which is the knock retard, which will tell you when it's knocking and the percentage of timing that it's taking out when it reads knock through the factory knock sensors. It's definitely something you need to know. If the engine is not happy, it will knock and it will take timing out, so you'll have to make adjustments to your timing table so that you do not get knock retard. The last thing you want it to do is to knock, especially if you're running the standard motor like mine. Knock, you know, you're on the edge of blowing it up. So if you see knock, you know, get out of it. Anyway, you want to keep knock retard. I like to keep a look on how much spark advance is actually there, so I leave spark. But throttle position, honestly, you know, if you wanted to leave it there, you could, but it makes no difference to the information that I need. It's nothing. So throttle position, we will get rid of that series. So we've got in the bottom row knock retard and spark advance. Okay, let's go into group 2 or the second row. You've got MAF. Well, we've done MAFless tune, we're running turbo, there's absolutely no need for that. Let's get rid of that series. And you've got MAP and O2. Now we do want them. We want MAP. You can see here it's reading manifold absolute pressure. That probably would work, but you can see that the limit is only 105. Best thing you can do is go in there, go over. This is the same as the channels. You've got to go over into your engine, go into your airflow, go into your manifold, then you'll find that manifold absolute pressure 2 bar. Double click that. It'll warn you, blah blah blah. You know what you're doing. That will come up a lot, that menu. Disregard it. Then you'll find that you're at 2 bar now, and you'll see that the max limit is 220 kPa, which will give us the scale in which it to read. So your map's set, and then your O2 AFR, air fuel ratio sensor. Now that's not going to work. You need to go into get your wideband up there. Now it's not the same as before. You don't just go into your external input over here like we did set up in the channel. It's actually a mathematical equation. If you go into there, it'll only give you the scale of the sensor, which is 0 to 0.5 volts or something, or 5 volts or something. So what you need to do is go into a transform. It transforms the information into what you need. Go into oxygen sensor, air fuel ratio, and you'll see it there. AEM 411. That there, double click it. You know what you're doing. And it's in. Your wideband, it's even labelled it nicely for you. WB for wideband AEM. You can see it's popped over here into this column. Beautiful. It's the information that we need to know. Now the top, pretty simple. You can leave them. They're pretty good if you want to know the speed of your vehicle and your RPM. Speed of your vehicle doesn't have to be there, but for me, when you see the speed of the vehicle and you're having a look through your log, you can tell what gear you're in by your speed of the car. Now there's no way to log what gear you're in a manual transmission. In an auto you could definitely put it in here, but my car's manual, so I go off speed and you can sort of see what gear it is. So that's pretty much it. For me, that's all the information that I need down here in the charts. You need RPM, speed, your map, change it over to your 2 bar, your wideband, make sure it's set up for your AEM or whatever wideband sensor you're using, knock retard and spark. For me, it's the only information that I need. Now for modifying the graph part of the scanner. For me, well, for most people, definitely the most important part of the tuning is the graph. Now, that default layout that we use has set up a lot of this very close to what we need. We just have to change some of the parameters to suit. One of the first things you'll notice is on our spark advance graph, cylinder air mass versus engine speed. Now that's good, cylinder air mass, that's what we chose in the layout, the cylinder air mass version of the racing O2 setup, is because that is already set up. The only problem is it only goes down to 1.0 air mass grams on the side, on the row axis. So we need to modify that. So what we need to do is find out the information, the correct information that we need. Now this is your spark advance table, so what you really should do is head on over into your editor. That's why we've opened it. Go into your spark and then go into your high octane main spark advance table. Now if you watch video 10, you know that we've made high octane, low octane the same when we build our base tune, so it doesn't matter which one you choose, they should both be exactly the same. Open it up and you'll see this spark advance table is very similar, row and column axis as in the scanner, but we want it to match exactly, so that if we want to make changes to the timing, the exact same points on the row and the column axis are the same, so we know what table to change. So if we find that we've got a little bit of knock at 1800 revs at 0.68 air mass grams, we know that it's going to match. We can come over into here and pull some timing out. So what we need to do is the RPM's the same, but the cylinder air mass, you can see, goes above 1.0, it goes all the way up to 1.2. So we need to change the scanner row axis to the same as this. So right click on the row axis, go down to row axis and copy the labels. Go back over into your scanner, and you can see we're back in the scanner. Right click on the graph section, go into graphs layout. Now you can see we're in the spark advance part of it, and you can go down to the row axis and you can see here's all the values of the row axis. So let's delete all them, backspace, delete, however you want to do it, get rid of them all. Just delete them all. Get rid of them, and then what we do is right click and paste, and that will take us back up to the 1.2. So then this graph will match your timing map or timing graph in your editor. So it's same, which makes it very easy. Now we've changed the axis. That one matches on spark advance. Now we need spark retard. Now in here, you change it back over into here, same deal. The row axis does not match up, so once again down the row axis, you've already got it copied, so it's just a matter of deleting it and pasting it as well, and paste. Okay, now just double check, get out of here and have a look at your spark advanced graph there. Scroll all the way down, it goes now down to 1.2. Perfect. Your spark retard, which this graph will tell you how much the timing is retarding due to knock mainly. We've locked out everything else, so if it reads knock down here, you'll see here numbers on how much timing it's pulling out where. And with that information, you then go over to the editor and pull timing out where it reads knock. It really is as simple as that. Once all the information is set up, it's not hard, it's just getting it set up. So you can see the retard table is now set up to 1.2 as well. So your two spark tables in your graph are done. Now for the O2 or the air fuel ratio part of the graph setup. Now in my opinion, this is definitely the most important two tables in the scanner and the most important tables for tuning. Very important to get this set up correctly. Now the O2 AFR graph simply tells you and logs your air fuel ratio as you're driving down the road. Just straight up, it'll just remember, it'll tell you in the tables at so many RPMs versus so many cylinder air mass, or what we're going to change it to kPa, kilopascals, and it will just tell you. Now the most important one is the O2 error. This will tell you the correction from what you're currently running with your air fuel ratio and what you're commanding. Now you might think, okay, how do we set the commanding? Well, back in video 10, when we're doing the bass tune, I really put a serious emphasis on the boost enrichment and the power enrichment tables. Now if we head over there, where we got fuel, power enrich. Now if you have a look at the boost enrichment table, this is what we've set in video 10 to your commanded air fuel ratio in boost. So when it starts going over 100 kPa, 100, what air fuel ratio? Now I'll go right into it in video 10. I strongly suggest maybe watching that. It'll definitely help understand. Then also your power enrich as well, which is off boost, which is down here. Same sort of table. It commands your air fuel ratio off boost. Now they command what you want. You head back over to the scanner, so it'll command, and then this will read, and then in this it'll give you the values of the correction of the amount that needs to be changed. Now if we make this table exactly the same as our VE table, it's just going to be a matter of copy and pasting to make corrections to your VE table to get your fueling exactly right. It really is as simple as that. But the most important part of it, and the hardest part, is just to get this table to match exactly. So, and you want your O2 to match as well, just so everything's same. Now, first thing we need to do is have a look at the VE table and see what's different. You can see here we've got cylinder air mass, and I can tell you now that down the side here that sensor is not the same. So let's have a closer look. We'll go into the engine, airflow, VE table. Now we want to recreate this over in the scanner, and over the side here you'll see manifold absolute pressure. We have a 2-bar operating system in here already loaded up, so we go up to 210 kPa. So all of the row axis needs to be changed over in the scanner. The column axis is right, RPM, so we need to change the row axis. So let's head back over and we'll see we've got cylinder air mass. So let's change. Let's right click, go into graphs layout, make sure we're on O2 AFR we'll start with, and you'll go down to the row axis, and the parameter is cylinder air mass. Well, we need to change that to manifold absolute pressure. So we'll click on that. We'll head into, and we know where to find it because we've already done it in the channels, and we also did it in the layout down the bottom there. So we need to go into airflow, then into manifold, then there's our trusty old manifold absolute pressure. Double click. No, I know what I'm doing. So now we've changed it to manifold absolute pressure 2-bar. You can see on the side there it's changed it over. The values aren't correct yet, we'll get to that, but let's change the O2 error as well, get that sensor sorted out. Same thing again, engine, airflow, manifold, 2-bar. Double click. You know what you're doing. Go 2 graphs. The labels are right. We'll go out there and have a look in a sec. Now we need the values to be right. Now, just like we changed the Spark Advanced table to suit, it's the same deal. Head over into the editor. Get over on the row axis, right click, row axis, copy labels. Head back over into the scanner, right click, graphs layout, be sure that you're on O2 AFR, head down in here, delete what's already there, and then simply right click again, paste. Then same again on your error, you want that to match up as well. And paste. Okay, it's done. Get out of here and double check. Now you'll see, let's just make this bigger for the time being so you can see it. We go all the way down, manifold absolute pressure 2-bar, all the way down to 210. Same as the error, all the way down to 210. So now our O2 AFR and error tables match our VE table, and our Spark Advance and retard tables match our high octane Spark Advance table in the editor. It's going to make life very easy to make changes when you're working with 2 tables exactly the same. Okay, that's pretty much all you need to set up. We're ready to put it in the car and go and drive it, log some information and make some changes. Simple as that. Well, one thing I would do is definitely save your layout. Save layout as. Choose whatever you want. I'm going to write Laddie's layout. Save it, that way you can always go back to it if something goes wrong. And we'll move on to going out to the car. Okay, we've got this scanner all set up ready to go and do some logging, some driving, saving some of that information. But first, I'll give you a few tips into tuning to make it easier and some things to look out for. One of the first things I noticed with a manual car is deceleration. So after you do a pull, if you just leave it in gear and let it decelerate in gear, it will definitely log a very lean mixture. You know, you've got no throttle, the injectors aren't pumping fuel, so it will read lean. So on your log, it will read extremely lean. So I find to get real accurate logging, when I do pulls, after a big pull, I don't just let it decelerate in gear, I'll just knock it into neutral and let it roll out. And that just makes your log a little bit more accurate. Another thing I like to do is obviously fuel in the car. Go to a service station, get the best fuel that you can buy for it really. Turbo Ls1, you want some good fuel. So, and I always go back to that fuel so it's regular, you know what I mean? You're dealing with the same thing every time, nothing's changing, because it's changes is what makes these things fail. And one other thing I've also noticed is, especially with my fuel setup, which I'll show you, you'll see that my regulator, fuel regulator, it comes out up into the fuel rail here, so there's no circulation of fuel through the fuel rail. So after you've been driving the car and it sits, that fuel that's in that fuel line, in that fuel rail, is red hot. So the first few drives, the first few minutes of driving, you'll find is really lean because it's trying to get through that boiling hot fuel. It'll run really lean, and that's good to remember. You know, your car's been sitting, the fuel's boiled. Do not get in your car and just rape it up the road, because it's going to be lean, promise you. So just drive it for a little bit and let that hot fuel get used, circulate through, give it, 2 or 3 minutes of driving and you'll get fresh cool fuel in there, and then your air fuel ratios will stabilise. Now, the other thing I haven't really spoken about is adjusting your idle. Now, this thing's standard cam, so I didn't have to play with the idle at all. The only thing I really had to do was I just cracked the butterfly open just a little bit, because my idle control valve was running at about 80%, and I just wanted to ease that up. So I'll show you where that is. On my throttle stop, in underneath the throttle stop, there's actually, where is it, under here, there's a little bolt that you get to under the bottom. You can just wind that open and it'll just hold your throttle blade open just that little bit. Sometimes that's more than enough, just to let that little bit more air in there, so it will idle. Now with a cam, there's idle control in the ECU that you can use. You have to have a pretty aggressive cam. I've tuned a couple of these now, and the standard idle settings, and just crack that throttle blade open just a little bit. It seems to work alright for the basic tuner without getting into too finer details on idle control. So with that all said, let's take it for a drive and go and log some runs. We're ready to start driving, start doing some scanning, but first we'll just connect to the vehicle. So you've got to connect your scanner to the vehicle, go to this little car here, and it'll say connect to vehicle, connect it up. Now it's connected. I'm not going to start scanning straight away. I'm going to drive and flush through some of that hot fuel before I start scanning. Righto. Alright, the hot fuel's definitely passed through. It's not running deadly lean on the hot fuel, so now we can start scanning. So you head back over, little red dot, start scanning. And you should straight away start seeing it's logging air fuel ratio error. You've got all your charts are starting to read your vitals that you want, and it's recording it. So everything you do will be recorded, so you can go back later and make changes. You can also be sure to check your channels make sure you're running 0% on your channels. I'll just quickly pull up, put it on channel so you can have a look. You can see down here we're running 0%. We are locked in open loop. It's something else you have to check. So just simply drive around, part throttle, full throttle. If you're first starting out, you only want to go small bits of throttle, just normal driving, make changes. Baby steps, make changes like I'm going to show you, and then eventually you can get fully into it. So just slowly but surely you'll be able to make changes to make it right. We can give it a bit of a pull. Into neutral for deceleration, because remember, deceleration will be super lean. It will affect the table dramatically if you just let it log on deceleration, dropping down the gears. It will just read seriously lean and it will stuff up your table for when you want to change your VE table. So just drive around a bit. I'm not going to show you every part of tuning because it's such a long drawn out process. You can do this hundreds of times to get your tune exactly right. Drive, log, then make changes, then drive and log and check again until you're happy with it. You know, change terrain, go up hills, different throttle positions. It will just give you a wide spread of information and a wide tune. So I'll save this log that we've done here, and I'll go home and we'll do a screen capture of having a look at the log and the changes that we make with the VE table. Okay, we're back from driving the tonner. We've logged a bit of a drive around, saved it, and now we're looking over the log in the scanner. We'll just have a bit of a look around. First thing you'll notice here is in the chart area, you can see where I've done a little bit of a pull, second, third and the fourth. See the RPM spikes here, the gear change drops down. You can also see that there is actually no knock at all. If you look at the knock retard part of the table, no knock, zero. It's got about, I think it peaks at 160 kPa on the boost, which is the boost level, which is 160. And we're at about 10.5, so it is a little bit rich. I did initially tune this in the cooler months, so I'm not surprised it was the hotter, less dense air. I'm running a little bit too much fuel. So that's just looking at that. That's just your vitals that you look at. If you saw any knock retard in there, you'd know that stuff's no good. Now, the most important information is actually in the graph, like I said earlier. Most important table is your spark retard. And if you notice there, I had absolutely no knock events at all. If it had any knock events there, it would say -4, -8, where it's pulling the timing out. If you had that in your case, you would go, say you choose 0.32 and 2400 revs, head back over into your editor, head into your high octane spark. What did I say? 32 at 24. Go across the same table, and you would pull some timing out of that table, and possibly surrounding cells as well. Pull some timing out until your engine does not knock. So that is how you would adjust the timing part of it. You know, back into the scanner, you can actually see how much spark advance you're actually running as well. If you want me to check that out. It doesn't really tell you when it's knocking, but you can see that at full flight I'm at about 12 degrees of timing, very conservative. I don't plan to push every last horsepower out of a standard Ls1, so I keep the timing conservative, I keep the fuel rich in it. The next thing you want to look at information is your air fuels. Now you can have a quick look and see what air fuel ratios it was running through your run. So if you have a look here, driving around, part throttle, no boost, you know, it looks pretty good. It's a little bit lean, which I do lean towards making it a tiny bit lean because you get good fuel economy. you know, it's only marginally lean, and when you're part throttle cruising along, having it nice and lean just helps the car have some sort of fuel economy. There's no real danger, you're not putting the engine under any pressure. But if you notice, as it comes up in the boost with the kPa up the side, up the RPM, slowly starts richening up. Now, like I said before, it was tuned in the cooler months, so the air was definitely denser, so we're running a little bit too much fuel now for warmer air. 10.3 is, I feel, too rich. I think 11.5 is good, so down at 4400 revs here, full boost, it's not too bad, and then when it starts revving out a bit, it's a little bit rich. The engine will live. I'm surprised it doesn't splutter when it's this rich. Sometimes when you start going too rich, it does splutter. So I will be making changes and just leaning the top end just out a little bit. Through the middle here is not too bad. Down low, I don't mind it being a little bit lean there. Now to make those changes, the O2 error AFR graph does the calculations for you. Now, from what I'm commanding on those boost enrichment and power enrichment tables, this is how far out I am off what I'm asking. Now, six numbers isn't much, not much at all. 18 numbers is a lot. That's very rich. And you'll notice these numbers here all come from the gear change, and the slight back off through the gear change. You can see the little blue section there. You can see down where my cursor is. It's on the gear change on that chart there. So it does throw rich when it drops down the revs. You know, it's just had a big gut full of fuel. You push the clutch in and rip the next gear. You know, it does go rich slightly. So that information, you know, becomes useless. You know, you don't really want to make too many changes to that main part of the table just on a gear change. Now we want to make changes to the VE table using the information that we have gathered from this O2 error AFR. So this is taking what your commanding AFRs are in your power enrichment and your boost enrichment, and then it calculates how far off what you're commanding compared to what you actually have. Remember, O2 AFR is what you have, and then this one compares that to what you want, and it tells you your adjustment. So to adjust your VE table, if you were first starting out and you tuned a fair way out, you would copy the whole table to make adjustments. Everything that it tells you here, you would copy the whole lot. Or if you're starting to fine tune like I am and you only want to tune sections, you can just tune, you know, say 140 kPa at 3200 RPM down to 165 kPa over to 64, and just take that part of the information and adjust to VE table, just that section. So you're not limited to changing the whole table. You can just change sections at a time if you really want to creep up on it, or you can change at the start, you can change the whole lot. So what I'll do now is I'll make a change to the whole lot so you understand. You can click the whole lot, it will highlight the whole table. Then you right click and you copy. Then you would head over. It would be the same if it was a section that you wanted to do. You would just get your section lit up, copy it, then head over to your editor. Now if you wanted to only do a section, you would have to go to exactly the same section. It would have to be exactly the same. So 140 kPa at 3600 RPM, highlight that section there. But we're doing the whole lot, so we'll light up the whole section, right click, and you would paste special. Now if the numbers are pretty far out, you would multiply by %. If your numbers are getting close, you fine tune it down by using multiply by % half, a little bit finer. So you would click that, multiply by % half, then you'll see that all the coloured sections here are where it has adjusted. So back over into the scanner, all this information that's in here, these -10s, leaning it out, adding fuel here and there where it wants to achieve your commanded AFR, has all now been exactly adjusted onto your editor on your VE table. And this in itself is how you tune the fuel. You go back after you've made these changes, you save it again, then you write it to your ECU, then you drive it back into your editor while you're driving it, and log it again, find out what it needs, and then just keep repeating the process over and over again. When you start getting really, really close, you want to start looking at how this VE table looks. Now you can make some adjustments and try and make it look really smooth. Now you can see my adjustments that I've just done there put a bit of a ripple through the middle. You know, tried leaning it out, adding fuel, it's made it a little bit rough. If I go undo what I just did, my old VE table is actually nice and smooth. Now this is the one that I built in winter, and it was running pretty spot on. Now in summer, warmer air, it needs to be fine-tuning it. So I'm going to go through and fine-tune it. I can't make a complete video on it because it would go for hours. You've really got to spend some serious time to really get this right. So if you stick to that, technique, you know, just take it easy, you really can't go wrong. So just have another look at it. Your O2 error AFR, copy these numbers, that's what you're commanding, that's what you want. That's your adjustment. Back over into your VE table. Highlight what you need to do, need to change, if it's the whole lot or it's just a section, and then right click, paste special, by percentage, if you bar out by percentage half, just a little bit out. So yeah, hopefully that helps you get it close and getting them air fuels dialed in and getting your timing dialed in. Okay, hopefully today's tuning videos helped you understand more how to tune, how to actually collect the information needed and to make changes to the editor and to the ECU to make your car run well. You just got to remember just to take it easy. You know, don't try and go too fast. It's taken me a long time. A lot of running up and down these country roads, recording the runs, making adjustments, just baby steps, and it's lived. And you know, I just can't emphasise, just take it easy and go slow. Don't try and make major changes too quickly, and your stuff will last for sure. Just be patient. It's very, you know, you've got to have a lot of patience to do this, I find. It's very hard driving down the road and, you know, you're making all the turbo noises. All you want to do is turn the tyres off it, but just control yourself and make the baby changes, get them air fuel ratios right, make sure you're not reading any knock, slowly creep up on it, and I'm sure you'll get there with the information I've given you. And you know, once you get there, you can have a little bit of fun. So if you like the video, like it. If you want to see more, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Yeah, I just remembered too, if you got any questions, feel free to put it in the comments. I'll see if I can answer them for you.